Hello, welcome to the show. I am excited to have you here. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We will bring you tons of good content like this. Today, I'm excited to have Stephen Pesavento, a good friend of mine, who is set to do well over 100 different fix and flips just this year. So what we're really going to talk about today is the things that Stephen did to put in place some systems that allowed him to be able to do over 100 deals this year, and he's going to double it next year. So without further ado, here is Stephen Pesavento.
People are at currently. So how many people in here have flipped a house or is currently flipping a house? Let's get a raise of hands. All right, so a few people. Who only invests in rental properties or passive investments, things like that? Raise of hands. Get them up high, can't see them. All right, just 2 or 3 people. Okay, great. Just want to know where people are at. So I'm going to talk a little bit about scaling your house flipping business, a little bit about me, my background. Born and raised in Minnesota. Just recently moved back to Denver about 9 months ago. Was living in Southern California for the last couple of years. But I started my career out in management consulting, moved to Boulder, started working in the tech community, and only started in real estate about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So definitely new to the space, but we've been able to scale up really fast. And a little bit about how we did that I'm going to talk about today. So I'm in 2 separate markets. I'm in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina, and Minneapolis, Minnesota. One of the reasons why I chose to get out of the market that I was in was I was living in Southern California at the time, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have dealt with this. If you're new to Denver, if you're new to real estate, and you're trying to get started, and I put in 90 offers on the MLS in about 6 weeks. So I was firing out offers like crazy. I had MLS access, and I only got 2 deals accepted, and that was because the numbers were bad. Once I did an inspection walkthrough and started sending out some marketing locally, and the response rate was just terrible. So I realized like my dollars are going to go a lot farther if I go out of state from a response rate perspective, as well as just the ability to kind of get going quickly. And so the reason why we're in these 2 markets is because they're 3rd-tier markets. Denver's a 2nd-tier market, and LA and New York is like a 1st-tier market. It happens to be a place that's growing very quickly, but it doesn't quite have the level of competition that a Denver has. All the stuff I talk about applies to markets like Denver and LA. It's just a little bit harder. You have to have more money to be able to scale the way that we did. So, like I mentioned, when I started out in 2016, I'd never done a real estate deal before. By the end of last year, we had bought and sold 75 houses, and 22 of them were flips or new builds or development projects that we had completed and finished in that first year. And a big piece of that came from modeling others. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to talk about kind of what I learned here. So this is an old outline, but it kind of gives an idea of the team that we've built, and that's a big part of what I'm going to talk about today. That if you're looking at scaling, you have to get outside of yourself. So I have 2 separate partners in Minnesota and North Carolina. They run the flips on the ground. So whether you have a partner or you have an employee, it's important if you're going to be working out of state to have somebody there who's going to be invested in the success of the project. You can do a lot of stuff remotely, but you do need to have some people there. And then as we move down, you can see there's different salespeople who are going out, doing outside sales. We call those acquisition managers. We have inside salespeople. That's kind of that blue section in the middle. Those people take phone calls from leads. They're qualifying people and they're setting appointments. And then we have the back end after a contract signed, transaction coordinators, project managers, people like that who kind of help make sure that everything gets wrapped up, more of that detail orientation. And so the key, what I'm going to talk about here is how we can build this. And I'm going to speak pretty high level. So I'm going to want some questions from you guys. Raise your hand, get up, let me know if you want me to dive deeper into something. Otherwise, I'm just going to blaze through everything and we'll save questions at the end. So it's a little funky having to reach all the way for this. But how did I do it? I did it through modeling other people's success. I just looked around and I went and found people who were already doing what I wanted to do and found a way that I could add value and learn from them. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Modeling is just a form of learning from other individuals how to act or perform. And why that's important is because when we're kids, how do we learn? We look at what our parents do, we listen to them, we act like them, and somewhere along the line we stopped and we thought we have to go to classes, we have to be in formal settings. One of the best ways to learn is to look at how can I find somebody else who's doing what I want to do and just copy them? How can I just model their success and take the things that are working for them and make them work within my business? So kind of the first step to that is knowing what your outcome is. So if you're a fix and flipper and you want to build a scalable fix and flipping business, you're going to have one path you go down. If you're trying to buy a bunch of multifamily units across the country, you're going to have a different process, a different set of models that you're going to want to look to. So the same stuff I'm going to talk about here today applies to whatever it is you're trying to learn. But when I get specific, I'm talking about kind of our business. So you have to have the right mindset, because when you're starting out learning something, you're going to fail. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to copy what somebody else was doing, and you're going to, you're going to have to bounce back from that. So if you don't have the right mindset going into it, it's going to be really tough for you to kind of persist through, because as anybody knows, like this gentleman just said here, just had a flip that went sideways. Well, that's going to happen. You're going to lose money on some deals, and you're going to make money on deals. But the whole point of scaling is that you have enough bets on the table so that when one of them goes bad, you have enough of the other ones that are going to kind of pick up. I'll get the next one. So I'm going to talk about where to find models in a second, but one of the things I think is important is I'm talking about learning from other people, essentially ripping off all their ideas and making them your own, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's the way that things have been done. There's no reason to recreate the wheel when the wheel is already working just fine. And once you're an expert and you're at that same level of the person you just modeled, then you can start getting creative and trying new things. But it's because you know enough. So when you're looking around a room like this, or you're at a conference or an event, or you join a mastermind, or whatever it is, you have to look, how can I add value to others? So a little story. When I was first starting out, I didn't know anything about real estate, but I had decided this was a thing that kept coming up, and I needed to take some action. I needed to just do it. So for me, the best way to do that was to just completely burn the boats. I fired all my digital marketing clients. I had no other way to make money other than to make this work. So I don't recommend it to everybody, but it was the push that I needed to know that I was going to make things happen. So I went to a real estate event just like this in Southern California. There was a woman speaking, and she was already doing what I wanted to do. She'd been flipping houses for 15 years. She ran a real estate club that had 100, 200 members that would come on a monthly basis. It was a pretty big venue. But I looked at her and I thought, well, where can I add some value? How can I help her? Right? She's already super experienced in this space. I want to be able to make an offer that's really going to matter. So for me, I knew how to build and manage web development projects, so I could build her a website. She happened to have a website that looked like it was built in the 90s, like a lot of real estate people do. So in return, I built her this website, and I got to follow her around for 3 months while she was doing a flip. And by doing that, yeah, I spent a ton of money on something I could have sold her on this website and probably made money on it. But by essentially giving her this for free, adding value and not expecting a lot in return, she was more than willing to take me under her wing and show me the ropes, which gave me the foundation to be able to speak about flipping and know enough to start having those conversations with people that are a little bit more unreachable. So whenever you're thinking of modeling others, think about how can I help that person before helping yourself, and it's going to go so much farther. So finding models, you can find them kind of all over the place. There's 3 main places that I look to find models. Locally, clubs, events like this, places like your church or your gym, or really anywhere that you're going to be able to meet with people locally on a regular basis. Events like this are perfect. I've met a lot of great friends and mentors and models at places like this. And on the other hand is digital. On the other hand is digital mentors. Those are people that you don't really have a chance to interact with face-to-face, but they're talking at you, podcasts, books, Audible, things like that. You're going to consume all this information, but I don't get to call Tony Robbins up on the phone and ask him, hey, well, what do you think about this? But I can learn a lot from him without having to have that interaction. And then, of course, there's national. That's, going to conferences, larger events, talking with people who are from all around the country. The benefit of doing that is that you're in an environment where people are not going to feel competition. I'm not building a business in Denver. I don't plan on it. So I don't mind sharing everything about my business because I'm not worried that I'm going to start creating a team of competitors. So when you look at things from a national level, the nice thing about joining a mastermind or going to an event like that is that people are usually a lot more willing to share because they feel like they can contribute, they can give back without feeling like they're risking their livelihood. So a couple examples just to put it in perspective, just kind of wrap this up, and then we're going to get into some of the specifics about scaling, is a few of my local models. Matt Owens, he runs a club just like this. He's a lot like Adam, well known within the community. But just by going to events, interacting with them, never asking for anything, just continuing to kind of interact and ask questions and things like that, he's become a good friend, a mentor, and I mean, he loans us almost all the money that we use to flip houses, right? And never once did I go to Matt and say, hey, Matt, I know you got a lot of money. Will you loan it to me for my houses? No, but by interacting with him on a regular basis, we have probably $6 or $7 million out with him because he was able to build trust in us over time and see kind of that development. Now, of course, digital mentors, everyone probably has some, whether you're listening to Bigger Pockets or Tim Ferriss or Tony Robbins, these are all people that you can consume information, but you don't actually get to connect with them. And if you're lucky enough to, it's usually on a very rare occasion. And then on the national side, I ended up being super against paying for coaching. That's why I traded, my time for mentorship when I first started out. But one of my partners really pushed me into this. I met this really great group of people, and the name of the group was Seven Figure Flipping. And the nice thing about joining a group like that was, at the time, there was probably about 60 or 70 people within the group that were running businesses just like mine. Some of the people were behind where we're at. Some of the people were ahead of where we're at. Some people were right where we wanted to be. And so the nice thing about that was I was able to sit down on video calls or, and ask individual questions and take all of their processes that they use for hiring and firing and sales and all these things and just rip those off and use those directly in my business. So that was a big one for me, and I just share that because I had a limiting belief about paying to be a part of something. And once I changed that, I mean, it was incredible. It changed my life. So on to the 3 secrets of scaling. They're not really secrets, but let's dive into them. I'm going to encourage you guys to ask questions if you have them, and I'll dive deeper if you have some questions. But the first one is building systems. And a system is a set of priorities and principles or procedures according to which something is done, kind of an organized scheme or a method. So this is the way that you do what you do. And we're going to talk about building a team next, but for every single role within your company, even if you're just starting out just yourself, on a regular basis, you're going to take a set of action. So from a sales perspective, if you're doing lead generation and you're cold calling, in order to do the cold call, you're going to have a set of things that you follow. In order to go on that sales appointment, you're in a set of things that you follow. So you want to create this system so that the lowest possible team member can execute and can do exactly the same quality work every single time. So the key is to be able to make it repeatable, because at the end of the day, you want to do the exact same thing over and over and over again. So your customers and your finance team knows exactly what to expect every month. So that I'm delivering the same quality of service to this person as I am to the next client. And then, of course, like I mentioned, you want to document the process. So here's kind of an example. This is just a set of folders that we have, but every single role has a training manual for exactly how they're expected to do what they do. They have checklists for every single piece of the process that they're going to be working from, and that way you can always look back and say, hey, it looks like you missed something here when you're not following the process. Kind of helps give that person know exactly what to expect to succeed. So here's an example of one of the processes. And a script doesn't seem like a system or process, but at the end of the day, you want to do it exactly the same way every time. And so I'll talk a little bit about marketing later, but this is one of the strategies that we've implemented lately, doing a lot of cold calling. And every time we do a call, the team member who's calling is expected to do it in exactly the same way every time. So every time they make a call, they should open it. Hey, this is Steven with We Buy Houses. I realize this call is out of the blue, but I'm looking to buy a house in your area, and I was just wondering if you'd be interested in getting a cash offer for your house, or just see what we'd be willing to pay for it. And so every single call that we make, we follow this script or another script. We want them to do it the same way every time, because if the script's not working, we want to get rid of the script. But if the script works, we want to make sure that everyone follows it, and people are not trying to get creative here. Because that's where you really run into problems from a scaling perspective, is if everyone's trying to do things in their own way, we really don't know what the expected outcome is. But I know that if somebody uses this script and calls for 4 hours a day and reaches 150 people per hour, or dials 150 numbers per hour and reaches 30 of those people, that I'm going to end up getting at least 1 or 2 potential leads. And now it's going to take a long time for those leads to convert, because cold calling takes the longest. Usually the people are the least motivated. But I can know from a statistical level what to expect, because people are following the same process. So another example, the deal analyzer. Like I said, most of the things that I have here was just ripped off from somebody else. So, I mean, none of this is my own creation, but we just recreated somebody else's deal analyzer. And so every single thing every property that we get gets run through the same analysis. And that way we know whether it's a deal internally or whether it's something that we're going to wholesale, maybe to a landlord or a flipper who has different criteria than us. But looks like we had a question there.
Do you read your script to the answering machine?
Sorry?
Do you read your script to the answering machine?
No, we don't. We don't leave messages on cold calls, because we want to reach a person live. Okay. So if somebody doesn't answer in 4 rings, we skip. It just moves to the next one. I know other people who like to leave messages, but the phone number we call from actually doesn't receive numbers. We don't want people calling us back and being like, hey, I wonder what this person called for. We know that we're just going to call them again. We're going to reach them at some other point, and at that point, we hope that we connect with them live. Because on cold calling, you only have 15 seconds. You really only have a few seconds to tell them who you are and why you're calling before they're going to get mad and maybe hang up on you. But we want to be able to reach them in that moment to be able to deliver our message right then and there. But the other thing about cold calling is that, so we use an auto dialer system called Mojo. It's available to realtors. There's a bunch of other great ones out there that I like better than Mojo, but Mojo works just fine for the price. But what we do, a little secret, is that when we're calling, it's dialing 3 lines at the same time. Well, if 2 people pick up, it's going to either drop the second person who picked up, or you can play like a voice message. But here's the trick. If you play the voice message and you just have it say, hello, hello, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Let me just call you right back here when I have better service. People are like waiting for your call, and they actually answer it, versus if you had some other kind of thing or just disconnected. So if you decide to do cold calling, that's a good takeaway. On to the last one. So final walkthrough checklist from a flipping perspective. This is useful from a wholesaling perspective as well. If you have a checklist of exactly what you're looking for in the house before you're going to send out that property to your buyers, that just shows that you're really vetting everything. You're able to answer questions on it, to a deeper level. So we know that we want to check the appliances, we want to check this, we want to check that. And that way on every property we know before we list it, we've gone through and we've blue taped anything that has an issue and we get that repaired before we get all the way to the end of the line. So the last thing on systems and process, and this is true across the board, is that you just need to, iteratively improve, right? You need to try something. You need to document it. You need to take that hypothesis and run with it and test it and see how it works. And based on the results, you want to keep doing more of it or you want to change it and try something different. And so it's all about this process of how quickly can you bounce back. So if you're cold calling, you work through a list and your script's not working or the list's not working, you want to make sure you've done enough to get enough information, and then you want to kind of change your approach. So that's true kind of across the board. So the next big thing of scaling in particular, I believe, is building the team, right? So 99% of real estate investors, 99% of the people who are going to be in rooms like this or at events or things like that are individual proprietors. They're people who are looking for the deal, they're finding the deal, they're flipping the deal, they're managing the deal, they're selling the deal. And so you only can do so much if it's just you. And you're your biggest, preventer from future growth. Because if you're focused on knocking out this really tough flip project and it's just bringing you down and it's the only one you got going, but all your time's going into it, you're not looking for that next deal. Or maybe if you've really got it down, you can do 3 or 4 at a time. But at some point, you're not going to be able to kind of continue to scale because you're going to be the limit. Or let's say you hit by a bus. You don't want your whole business to fall apart because you're not available. So building the team is the next big piece. So especially being out of state is 100% critical and crucial for us to do because I'm a big believer in face-to-face sales. I think in this market, with how competitive it is, whether we're talking about Denver or Minneapolis, people still buy from people that they trust. And when you have competitors like Knock and Open Door that are spending tons on marketing and are starting to change the industry, you have to have something that differentiates yourself. So they're going to give you an offer over the phone, and they're going to, once it's under contract, they're going to send somebody out to take a look at it and then renegotiate after the fact. But for us, what we believe in is that face-to-face sale. So we sit down with the homeowner in their house, we build rapport, we build trust, and then we negotiate the very best price that they're going to be happy with while also giving us enough margin that this is a deal we can either sell or renovate and sell or something in between. So a few of the roles that we have, just back real quick, sorry. I think you do this one. No. So a few of the roles, just to mention, we have inside sales. I think this is critical if you're going to start scaling and doing scaled marketing. You have to have somebody who's going to be available all the time to answer the phone. And when you're first starting out, you can be in a place where you can answer the phone and you can go on the appointments and things like that. But at some point, one of these roles has to get hired so that you don't miss a phone call. Because I think the absolute worst thing that you can do as a real estate direct marketer is having your mail go to a voicemail. I love it when the competition does that because they're missing out on a ton of deals. People are only gonna leave a message if they're really mad, they want to tell you to F off, or they're gonna leave a message if they're extremely motivated. But you don't only want the people who are extremely motivated. There's plenty of people who call that you need to kind of dig deeper below the surface to find out why they're interested in selling. So obviously project manager is key to managing projects once you have more than 3 or 4 going. Transaction coordinator is a key role once you have that property under contract to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Because if you have 10 or 15 or 20 deals going at any time, you need somebody who's really well organized, who is just better at the details than a sales guy like me or somebody like an inside salesperson. So as I mentioned, sales, I believe, is the most important part of scaling a flipping business, and that's because I believe you have to have access to the deals in this kind of market. Sure, maybe we talk in 2 years, the market crashes, and deals are really easy to come by. We'll be talking about a different model. But at the end of the day, you have to have access to the deals, so whether you're going to buy them through wholesalers or you're going to buy them direct from sellers or through the MLS, really being able to sell is going to be critical. Sales and negotiation. So a key part for us is following a set sales process, and you probably can't see that up there very well, but every single sale we go on is exactly the same from start to finish. We walk in, we set an advance agreement, hey, thanks for meeting with me at the house, I really appreciate you taking the time, just so you know what to expect here. Maybe you can give me a little tour. At the end of the tour, if I can make you an offer, I'll let you know. If I can't make you an offer, I'll also let you know right then and there. Does that sound okay to you? Perfect. And assuming that my offer is great and you like the terms, are you ready to make a decision to sell your house today? So it's having a specific set of talk tracks and pieces of the puzzle that you're trying to assemble in a certain order that really help make the sales process come together. Because by getting that advance agreement, you know ahead of time whether that person's ready to make a decision. Because if the person says, no, I'm not ready to make a decision today, you know that they have some kind of hesitation, or they might not be motivated. And so if I end up giving them an offer, great, now they have something they can shop to the next investor. So again, we love it when other investors leave offers behind and let people think about it. But we don't let people do that because we set that expectation up front, and we only share numbers if it's something that somebody actually they're ready to make a decision to sell. Any questions on that?
So how do you handle those situations where the person's not ready?
Yeah, so we try to think of buying real estate directly from sellers, especially in the single-family, small multifamily market, as a one-call close type transaction. Our expectation is that we're going to be meeting with people who are motivated, and that we're going to get them to sign that contract right then and there in person. So that's probably 60 or 70% of our contracts are signed face-to-face on that first try. Now, the other 30% come on follow-up. People want to think about it. They have another family member that maybe needs to be involved. Well, then you're kind of switch from a one-call close into more of like a B2B multi-call type close situation. So when someone tells me that, great, totally makes sense. Thanks for letting me know that you're not ready to decide today. So what I'll do is I'm going to gather all the information I can. I'll answer all the questions we can, and then if it makes sense, we'll set a next step. And usually that next step is another face-to-face meeting. Hopefully if mom or grandma needs to be there, or we need to get an aunt on the phone who lives out of state. So that way they're all a part of that conversation, and we're not giving them the number, because once you give the person what they want, they're never going to call you again, right? You got to kind of it's like dating, you don't want to just put all your cards on the table at once. You got to kind of bring people along for the ride. Any other questions on sales?
Would you be willing to share, what do you use for percentages? If you go ARV minus repair, what baseline are you using to come up with what you want?
It's market dependent. If I was in Denver, I'd be using 85% or 80%. I'd be trying to buy at 75 or 80, and I'd probably be selling at 80 or 85. Like most of the big wholesalers, Net Worth, New Western, any of these other big guys, Home Trust, they're all selling deals at 80 or 85% because there's flippers who don't have a model for finding properties, that they have the system to flip, but they don't have the system to control the inventory. So in this market, you gotta, in my eyes, overpay. But that's just kind of where it goes.
Yeah.
And so you buy with the hope that you take on all the other risks along the way and maybe hope for some appreciation. In North Carolina, 70% rule works just fine. Works great all day. Minnesota, 70% rule works fine all day. Now, sometimes I can sell properties at a little bit higher than 70%, but it's difficult because the buyers in those markets, even though people always are like, oh, well, those markets got to be, they're still extremely competitive, but the buyers don't have the same expectation that they're going to have to pay 80 or 85%.
You're talking from a wholesale perspective.
I'm talking wholesale, but I'm also talking flip. Like, I'm not going to buy something in Minnesota at 85%. But if you were willing to be a flipper coming from Colorado and going into a market like Minnesota and buying at 80 or 85%, call me, because you'll buy every single deal I have. You'll have a hell of a business. But the local buyers are just not willing to do it yet. We'll see kind of what happens. Any other questions? Cool. So the last thing, control the inventory. It goes back to that thing I was telling you about when I wrote 90 offers in Southern California. I realized that the most important part of the puzzle at this point of the cycle is to have access to the inventory. If you have the deals, you have the control. So sure, there's deals that we want to sell that we can't sell because no one wants to buy them because they're just not good enough deals. But if you have a deal, someone's going to want to pay for it and pick it up. And if you want to flip it yourself, you're going to be in a much better position if you get to choose which ones you do. So if I'm getting 15 or 20 properties per month under contract, it's easier for me to say, you know, I'm not going to do that deal that's going to be $100,000 in renovation and take 6 or 8 months because I don't have to. I can pick these 4 deals that I know are going to be a little bit more consistent and are going to be knocked out in 3 months and are giving me the same return. So by controlling the inventory, you really have control of your whole business, right? Even us with a scaled business, buying 75 deals our first year, there's still ebbs and flows. 1 month might be 5, next month might be 20, next month might be, you know, somewhere in between. But by having that control, you get to decide, you know, what you're going to do. So I think the key to controlling the inventory, I mean, either you have access to some great wholesalers, you have some good relationships, you've built rapport, they're going to send you the deal right away, you're going to be that guy who gets your EMD money down, you're going to take action quickly, maybe you're going to be a cold caller, maybe you're going to send direct mail marketing, maybe you're going to do PPC, you're going to do one of these methods for acquiring deals. Maybe you're going to put an offer on the MLS and you're going to be that person who is building relationships with realtors and finding stuff. At the end of the day, it really comes down to choosing your channel. It's either time or it's money. So if you're buying from wholesalers, or if you're buying through relationships from clubs, from realtors, from cold calling, that's money, or that's time, right? It's your time, you're spending it. Now, on the money side, it's a little bit more scalable in my eyes because, you know, as long as I put out this amount of marketing, I'm expecting to get this much in return. It's not a perfect equation, but it's a little bit more scalable. You have to decide where you're at and what works for you. So obviously, we talked about marketing. There's a ton of different ways to market, but the primary ways are the ones that I keep talking about. It's everything you're going to read about on Bigger Pockets. I'm not like releasing some great new secret about real estate marketing. The stuff that works, and that's the stuff that people should be doing. But you should only do it if you're going to do it at a high enough volume to know that you're going to get a deal, right? So one thing that I learned was when I was in California and I sent 3,000 letters and I got 11 phone calls back, that I wasn't sending at a high enough volume for that market. Now, if I'm in Ohio and I send 3,000 letters to a motivated list, I'm probably going to get, 30, 40, 50 phone calls back, which is going to give me a higher likelihood that I'm going to be able to get a deal. So whatever you choose, you want to make sure that you can do it at a high enough volume that you're going to be guaranteed to get something. So in the Denver market, I don't know what that is. I know the response rates on mail is a heck of a lot lower. Sent out a few letters buying a primary for myself here, and the response was dismal. But the key is you want to make sure that if you send out only 1,000 letters or 1,000 postcards, well, you might get one or you might not. And so after 6 months of sending out 1,000 postcards, you're going to be like, well, postcards don't work. Well, it's because you didn't do it at a high enough frequency rate to be able to guarantee that you were going to get something out of that. So that's my little advice on mail. On PPC, the key to search advertising is that people have a buying intent when they go on and they type in to the browser and they say, sell my house fast, or, cash for houses, or any of the different words that people use when they're looking to sell their house. That means that they're looking for a solution, which is a lot more valuable. Again, the challenge, you have to be able to spend money in order to do something like that. But if you don't have any money and you have a lot of time, then cold calling is definitely your best friend. You go and buy a list, you find a motivated list, probates, divorce, tax liens, any of these different motivation levels, and you just start literally just calling through that list, and you're going to get 99% of the time people are going to say no, but you're really just looking for that one person who might be interested, because that lead's worth $10,000 or $20,000 from a wholesale perspective, and $50,000, $80,000, $100,000 from a flipping perspective. So you just have to decide which way you're going to go about finding deals. I mean, obviously on the other spectrum, you have your referrals, you have your networking, you have attending events like this. Just find whatever you think is going to work for you and kind of go with that and make that your thing. So I talked about this, so I'll just skip this slide. But yeah, in summary, it comes down to building a system, something that's repeatable, a process that you can continually do over and over. And I like to do that for every single role. So you start small. You start with, just one process a week or one process a day. Like if you're already doing this business, you're doing things already. You just want to document them so you can teach someone else about that. You want to build a team. If you're really great at sales, you probably want to hire somebody who's maybe a little bit better organized than you, so they can kind of come up and clean up behind you. If you're more organized, and you probably want to hire a sales guy so that you can have them going out and killing it on the deals and pay them kind of a commission basis. And then finally, controlling the inventory. So finding your way to get the deals. I'm a big believer in spending money because it's scalable on marketing. But if you want to do a cheaper way, it might take you longer. You might not have the result, but you're also not risking as much to kind of go more of a networking or cold calling approach. So with that, you guys have any questions? I'm sure there's some questions in here.
So, the last year you bought and sold 75 houses. How much percentage would you say were from you doing your cold calls and finding your way as opposed to buying from wholesalers? I'm sure you bought from both.
I never bought a house from a wholesaler last year.
Okay.
Everything was from our own funnel. If anything, that was probably an opportunity for us to buy from wholesalers or buy from the MLS. But we were I'm a big believer in focus, so we found one channel that worked, and we worked at that channel until we were experts in it, and then we kind of added another. So first it was direct mail, then it was PPC, and now that those are both running, we've kind of added cold calling in. So cold calling is like a new development for us, but that's kind of how that worked for us.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. You first.
So I'm a little bit new to the fix and flip market. What is the typical project that you offer your the seller? If I'm on the MLS, what do you offer them? Is there a reason to work with you than just sell it on regular MLS?
I think your question is, why would somebody sell to us over selling to a realtor? Through a realtor.
Well, I'm asking what discount you offer them. Isn't that the real reason?
Are you talking about me selling it to buyers, people who are other investors, or are you talking about buying it from?
Well, you're buying it from them, right?
I'm buying it from a seller.
Right. Where is that you're offering?
Sure. So in our business, what we offer is value. We're the same as, I like to compare this business of buying directly from sellers to being a car dealership. You, of course, can go and sell it yourself on Craigslist, do all the work, and even if you're working with an agent, there's still going to be a lot of work that's going to be on your plate, and you're going to have to do that. You're going to maybe get a little bit more money, but there's a little bit more uncertainty, versus if you come to us, like trading in your car, it's going to be done, I'm going to give you a price today, you're going to know that it's all taken care of, but the key is, it's that value piece, right? You're going to pay a little bit more for our service, but in return, we're going to take away all that uncertainty. We're going to take away all the headache. You're not going to have any repairs you're going to have to make, maybe that you can't afford. And a lot of the times, the people who are selling houses that are in distress, they don't have, these houses would not qualify for a traditional mortgage. So the only option would be to sell to an investor through a realtor. And at the end of the day, maybe they get more money that way, but maybe not, because the realtor's got to take their commission.
What's that typical 20% that you're offering the owner? What is that number?
We don't really ever talk in terms of percentages, but like we were talking about earlier, usually buying at 70% of ARV minus the cost of repairs, minus $10,000 to $15,000, right? Because we're trying to build in a wholesale fee in everything we buy, even if we keep it. Because if we need to be able to repay back that marketing spend. And on average in our market, it's about $4,500 to $5,500 per deal in marketing spend and overhead costs. So that's kind of how that works. But usually we're just talking in, hey, these are the houses that are like your house. Do you know this house? Do you know that house? Do you notice how this one is? Do you notice how that one is? And then we're kind of talking down, well, if we buy it, we're going to have to do this, and we're going to do this. And then we kind of just give them a number. We never talk about percentages or commissions or things. It's just like, here's the number that you get to walk away with, and we take care of the rest. And a lot of the times people are like, great, that sounds good. And some of the times people are like, that's not enough. I think I'm going to try my options elsewhere.
How far outside of Raleigh did you go? Like if we were comparing it to Denver, did you come out to Lakewood or was it just?
We buy within an hour of Raleigh. Raleigh is probably like 2 million people. It's a lot smaller.
Well, all the neighboring cities and towns also.
Hour drive of Raleigh, but our best markets are the actual cities: Raleigh, Denver. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Apex, Cary. These, which are like Lakewood, Aurora.
Did you just jump right into that big area, or was it? Did you add into it?
There was more of like a scaling perspective. Through going into ListSource, you can pull data for free and understand how many houses are in a certain zip code, how many houses were sold for cash, what's the percentage. And I can understand like what my farm area looks like, and then based on that marketing chart, was able to pick up exactly what zip codes we wanted to focus on first until we generated enough revenue to afford to go into other markets. Because like we're sending 100,000 mailers a month right now, but we started out sending 10,000 mailers a month. So you kind of scale up as you generate revenue, and it builds on itself.
What made you or guided you to pick those two out-of-state markets?
Third-tier markets, rapid growth. Minnesota is great for flipping because it has one of the highest per capita rates of single-family home ownership. So that means there's a lot of people who already own homes. There's a lot of people who are going to be looking for that next home that's already renovated. So that was a big one. And then Raleigh's just grown super rapidly. And my partner moved from Southern California to Raleigh because of it's a lot easier to build out there, a lot less regulations. Cost of building $75 a square foot instead of 170 or 200, so it just ends up being kind of an opportunity there.
Can you explain that
First tier is like an expensive, large metropolitan area like in LA or New York. I'm sure there's some other ones. Second tier is like a Denver and Austin, maybe a Seattle. Growing rapidly, not quite as big as a first tier market. And then third tier is, these other smaller markets that still have kind of hustling, bustling economies, but they're just not quite as big. A lot of people are moving to those kind of markets because of cost of living is a lot lower.
Where can we get a map of that? That's fascinating.
It's a great question. Probably have to just Google it. I don't know.
Okay.
How do you do your research, find which cities are rapidly growing, have the price level that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you can pull a lot of that data. I would just Google it. I would look at comparing like MSA data, like Metropolitan Statistical, I can't think of what the name of it is. Yeah, but you can just Google around and you can find a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of big like CBRE and some of these big commercial brokers. They put together reports that talk about in general where some of the fastest growth is going on. So you can look at those and then get ideas of where else to kind of like search around and find some of that data.
How far south do you go in the Minneapolis market? Burnsville, all the way down.
We go all the way to Burnsville, then we kind of cut off there. We're again about an hour drive out of Minneapolis. For the most part, that's because we don't want our salespeople driving too far. But as we continue to scale up, maybe we'd expand. But even right now, we're in Minneapolis. We're probably only servicing like 1/3 of the population we could be from a marketing perspective. There's just a lot more juice in that lemon to squeeze. Cool.
All right.
Awesome. One last thing. Since, like I said, I learned this stuff all from other people, a couple giveaways. I have nothing to sell you guys, but these are some things, some tools that I got from other people that I've kind of reformatted. So if you're interested in them, kind of that cold calling script, the checklist that I showed, or this flip calculator, you can just head there to that website. You just click a link and just download it. Because everything that I learned was learned from other people. So if you're interested in that, definitely let me know. And if you happen to be already successful in real estate and you've already been flipping but you want to take your business to the next level, that 7-figure flipping group, again, I don't get anything for this, but that group helped me out a lot. So if you have any interest in learning about that, feel free to send me an email or something, because it was kind of a game changer for me. So just happy to share with other people.
Is that Justin Williams?
Yeah, Justin Williams. So he's got, House Flipping Formula, which is like the baby version. I'd recommend skipping that if you're brand new and just going. He's got another program called 6-Figure Flipping, which sets you up to go into the next level. The benefit of it for me was that it gave me access to all these people to mentor, and also a community of people who paid the fee to get in, which means it's a little bit more exclusive. Because you got to be serious, and sometimes you'll show up to events that are free, and luckily this is one of them that I feel like is always high caliber people. But you show up, and there's a lot of people who've been coming, but they never really do anything, and so it kind of gets you a chance to be in a room with people who are all like super motivated, kind of on that same wavelength, and just really help propel me forward for sure. Cool. That's all I got.
Perfect, man. Hey, thank you, Steven. Just to let everybody know, it's 1:22. We have this room until 2, so please feel free to network amongst each other. And yeah, thanks for coming.
Cool. Thanks, guys.